Author Showcase, featuring my guest today, Dr. Ursula Thatch, author of You Mean I'm Not Crazy, My Hormones Have Been Betraying Me. I think they love the title already.
It's a good title.
Let's talk about your background before we get into it. Dr. Thatch attended Washington University in St. Louis, and she graduated with a degree in psychology. After earning her medical degree from SIUE, Dr. Thatch completed her residency in obstetrics and gynecology at St. Louis University School of Medicine, and she is a board-certified OBGYN, and she has treated women for over 30 years. In 2015, Dr. Thatch sought out training in search of an alternative approach to medicine. And in 2016, she then opened BioLife Balance with a commitment to offering both men and women an alternative, natural approach to optimal hormonal balance. So my first question is, you were already an OBGYN and you went to a conference and then you changed your whole practice. What happened?
I went in search of answers for my patients. I had this practice for probably about 21 years at this point. And a lot of these women who started with me, I delivered their babies. We kind of got old together over to our 40s and 50s. That's not old, but we aged together. How should I say that? And I started to notice this very unhealthy pattern in my own patients that I had been taking care of, many of them for a couple of decades. We had been through so much together, pregnancies and surgeries and, cancers and terrible supervisors and divorces, everything. So I noticed that they were gaining weight each year. Their medicine list was growing. They were not only overweight and unhealthy, they were also anxious and depressed. So the medicine list was concerning, but the patients were just not well. And the thing that I was concerned about is that I felt that I had failed these women with my practice because I was closer to these women than any of their other doctors. So in light of that, I started to look for some answers because clearly I had not gotten it right, because this wasn't happening to just one or two women walking through my door. This was happening to nearly every patient I saw on a daily basis.
And we're talking about thousands of patients.
Thousands.
Okay. Now I'm going to venture to add to your story. So you went to a bioidentical hormone conference.
Correct.
And what was the key takeaway from that conference? What was the difference between that and anything else you had been doing?
We were totally getting it wrong.
Getting what wrong?
Practicing hormone therapy, medicine in general, I felt. We were getting it wrong. And I tell people often that I was pretty well baptized into medicine. So I was by the book, by the protocol, by the guidelines. And that simply was not working because I then, at the end of that conference, realized that was in part why my patients were sick.
What is that?
That we were not prescribing the right medications, that the hormones played a critical role in why they were, shall I say, fat, sick, and depressed. We could do something different and better that would change the whole course of their health.
So can you tell us briefly, what is a bioidentical hormone?
Bioidentical hormone therapy, bioidentical hormones, I should say, are very similar to the hormones that your body once made. That's why we call it replacement therapy. We're replacing something that your body naturally made at one point in time when it was in a state of better health. When you are at your better state of health is when your hormones are actually at their highest, which is usually in your 20s and 30s. As we age, those hormones decline, and hence the onset of all the diseases of aging.
So one thing I learned, and one of the things you say in your book is that we all lose our hormones as we age. And then what happens?
We fall apart.
Okay. That you're not crazy. So there was a study done. Can you tell us just briefly? People will say, I can't take estrogen because that'll give me breast cancer. Okay, and so I hear a lot of women my age, and they'll say, well, I'm not on hormones because my doctor says I shouldn't take them. So can you just talk to us a little bit about those two things?
In 2002, a study came out called the WHI study, the Women's Health Initiative. This study essentially, I think, through fear in the world of medicine regarding hormones and hormone replacement therapy. Prior to that, we had been pretty comfortable, at least I had been comfortable prescribing hormones, but this study came out and I think it really terrified not only patients, but it terrified providers alike. The study was not a very good study. As a matter of fact, it's been studied many times. The study has been studied many times. Two of the major things was that I think that they had in the study women who were much older. The average age of the woman in the study was 63, which was about 12 years, 11, 12 years past menopause. The other big problem with the study, which they did not really highlight, was the drugs that were used were primarily synthetic hormones. That was the problem. But the study terrified people because they came up with the conclusion that hormones cause breast cancer and heart attacks and strokes and et cetera. But the problem was the study managed to impress everyone that hormones were bad, and so they just kind of threw everything into the pot. All sorts of hormones were included in everything is bad. And it was when they started to really look at this study and dissect it, they realized that wasn't quite true.
Gotcha. So so basically there's synthetic hormones and then there are the bioidentical hormones that most closely mirror our real hormones.
Correct.
Now, one of the reasons I'm kind of smiling is because I became Dr. Thatch's patient quite a few years ago. And I really believe I would have died if I had not gotten on those before COVID started because my levels were so low. One day my brother came and he said, I met this doctor and you and mom need to go to her. I was like, okay. How many men can relate to this, right? You know, a lady who's like having some problems, right? So Dr. Thatch, so tell us, I have a whole list here, and this comes directly from your book. It says hormones regulate energy, mood, reproduction, sleeping, and what else?
Everything, essentially.
Everything. So the immune system,
Yes,
bone and muscle health,
absolutely.
metabolism,
Yes,
affecting weight,
yes,
sexual function.
absolutely.
People need to know about that.
Yes,
Balancing blood pressure, blood sugar, and other basic body functions.
absolutely.
So when you lose them, what happens to, let's say, your blood sugar? Like you said, so many more people were on medications, right?
Correct.
So what is actually going on with our hormones that's causing these problems?
When you lose your hormones, particularly in women, estrogen, testosterone, women make testosterone, and progesterone, all of these hormones are helping to regulate your body weight. And when you lose them, you develop a great deal of visceral and belly fat. Most people are used to calling it that pooch, that belly fat. And once you start getting into that visceral fat issue, then your glucose is elevated, this leading to insulin resistance, and then subsequently diabetes, which actually is driving most of the diseases of aging we're finding.
Gotcha. So you mentioned women have testosterone.
Yes.
I don't think I knew that.
No, most people don't.
Before I met you, of course. So why is testosterone so important for women and men?
Your ovaries made both estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Unfortunately, we typically only replace in traditional medicine estradiol and maybe progesterone. But your testosterone is critical. And I often tell you, and we've talked about this, if I had to pick just one hormone, it would probably be testosterone. And testosterone does a lot. It helps with your brain. It helps with your mood. It helps with your bone health, muscle health, your metabolism. So when you have better lean muscle mass, you actually metabolize your glucose and your cholesterol better, which keeps you from having diabetes and high cholesterol.
That's excellent. You know, one of the things you talked about, which I found fascinating, was about hips and people passing after they fall, oftentimes senior citizens.
Correct.
Can you tell us why that happens oftentimes?
Women, when they lose these critical hormones, estradiol and testosterone, they become osteoporotic. They lose bone. When you lose bone mass, then you're at risk of falling. And if you fall, you break something. They also become sarcopenic, which is muscle wasting or loss of muscle mass and strength, which also supports the skeletal system, resulting in an increased risk of fall. So you can break almost anything, your wrist, your spinal fractures, but hip fractures have a very high mortality rate associated with them. In men and women both, you can have osteoporosis.
So I think you said something before about if your hormones are low, you have a less ability to heal.
Yes.
Okay, so why is that?
Because one of the things that hormones does is it helps with your immune system. Many times I talk to people about inflammatory things. So hormones are very anti-inflammatory. So when you lose that estrogen and that testosterone, you're increasing inflammation, which is why things start to ache. Your knees start to ache, your hips start to ache. But it also helps with the healing process, because if you're in a state of better health, you actually heal better. Your immune system is better.
Okay, so you mentioned the WHI study, but you also talk about the amount of training or why doctors seem to shy away from hormones. And one of the things I found fascinating, you said that doctors only usually have maybe a month or so or 6 weeks to study hormones.
Most, even in my field, obstetrics and gynecology, we're supposed to be the hormone doctors or prescribing and managing hormone in women in our practices. However, I'm finding that we were not well trained. I felt fairly well trained from medical school and residency, but a lot of people I don't think have the same amount of training. I think also we're being led to believe certain things by the drug reps that are there and this study that came out. And so instead of going outside of what is just being handed to you in terms of information, they're believing what they're being fed. So I think they're missing out. And I had my head in that box. I talk about that for a long time. And when I stepped out of that box and realized, wait a minute, this is not right. We don't have this story correct.
Okay. You named the book, You Mean I'm Not Crazy. And you talked about gaslighting in the book.
Yes.
So why did you name it that? And what does it mean toward gaslighting?
I named it that because it was derived literally from things that women said to me often in their initial contact with me. You mean I'm not crazy? Because many of these women have been subjected to extensive workups and evaluations and some very invasive testing and procedures. And after what I call the grand varsity workup, everything came back normal, and therefore they can't identify what's wrong with them. So many times the patient felt crazy. And oftentimes, unfortunately, I think the medical community made them feel as if they were crazy because they could not identify what was going on with them. So we did all these tests, lady. There's no answer here. You must be crazy.
So you mean to tell me I'm supposed to be in my mind thinking these hot flashes and me not being able to sleep at night and this pooch is my own issue and not somebody else's issue, something? That's what they would tell us?
Basically,
Yes.
Because it had a lot of other symptoms that went on with it.
Mm-hmm. So you also say that, again, mood. I know when I was in my mid-40s, before I met you, I was really concerned because I was kind of losing things and I felt like I had a lot of brain fog. And because both of my parents have a history of dementia, I was really worried that, and at that time we didn't even know my mom had it, right? But I was worried that I was getting early onset dementia. And you explained to me that it was probably not that, but it was likely
loss of hormones and hormone deficiency.
So what would you say to a younger woman? So, no, let me ask you this. Is there such a thing as post-menopause?
I don't think postmenopause is a good term. We often use it. I think once you are in menopause, you're in a menopause until you die. You're not postmenopausal. A lot of women think, well, I'm postmenopausal, I'm past it, I'm through it. No, you spend a third of your life essentially in menopause.
Very good. Isn't this helpful? I have a couple of questions here. Do men have, this is from the audience, do men have hormone issues too?
Absolutely.
Can
It's
you
called
answer?
andropause.
Okay. All right. And so if you see a man of a certain age and he has a beer belly,
Mm-hmm.
what might be happening?
Some of the same things that are happening in women. It tends to occur a little later in men. Women hit menopause early 50s, men hit andropause early 60s, but the symptoms are very parallel. They're starting to gain weight. Their blood pressure is getting a little bad. They're on cholesterol medicine. They're now diabetic. They're depressed a little bit. So it looks like male menopause, basically, but it's called andropause, and it's absolutely men with hormone deficiency.
Thank you. Why should everyone be examined about their hormones? And if they do get examined and they go to traditional medicine, what's going to happen?
They're going to tell them everything looks fine and your numbers are normal.
Okay. And I think that's fascinating. You mentioned, I think it was thyroid. And I think you explained to me one of the first times I was in your office, I believe, and you said, well, they're going to tell you that your thyroid is normal because it's normal based on maybe a woman in her 60s who may be a Caucasian woman in her 60s, and they're saying, okay, you in your 40s, you're normal because she's normal, but not necessarily for me in my 40s.
The way I describe that is that, and explain that a little more, is that normal, if you think about who goes to the doctor, it's sick people. So the lab base is based on sick people. That's the reference range. And it's also based on age. But if you're trying to be healthier, you want your labs and your hormone levels to be somewhere closer to a 30-year-old, which is where you're at your peak health. That's also when your hormones are that high. But the thing is, I tell people, I can't make you 30 years old, but I certainly can try to push your hormones back in that direction.
I think this was really good. And one thing I would like to just share is that because you prescribe natural hormone therapy, it is not covered by insurance because they cannot trademark natural products. So it is an investment, but I tell you, I think I've lost at least 15 pounds. And even though I get in trouble all the time, I'm doing so much better. Thank you, Dr. Thatch.